Japan had 2.1 million military deaths in World War II, but not all of these were in combat. In fact, the majority weren't, and they didn't come from disease or accidents either. No, about 60% of these deaths came from starvation. But how is that possible? Was Japan just woefully unequipped to feed such a large army? Was it the purposeful result of the Allies shutting down Japanese supply lines? Or was it a matter of bureaucracy? Were there intentional, greedy decisions made by Japanese leaders that would result in this mass starvation? In this Learning Lodge video, we're breaking down one of the most surprising statistics of World War II, that 60% of Japanese military deaths were from starvation. To begin, I need to dispel a common rumor that I've heard repeated a lot in this discussion. Due to the shocking numbers of starvation, many are led to believe that the Japanese didn't offer their soldiers rations. This is simply not true. Imperial Japanese rations existed, but they were basic, to say the least, and they don't seem like enough food to sustain an active soldier. The daily Japanese imperial ration, at least in its planned form, contained this: 3 cups of rice, 1 cup of barley, 1 cup of raw meat or fish, 4 cups of chopped vegetables, half a cup of pickled radishes, and flavors such as salt, bean paste, sugar, and tea. While you might look at this and say, wow, how could they have possibly starved and all that? We need to remember that this is the food a soldier was allocated for an entire day. And this day wasn't spent just sitting around. It was spent marching, training, and doing all sorts of physical activities. For some scale, let's compare this to just the breakfast unit of an American K ration. This contained chopped ham and eggs, biscuits, malted milk tablets, a dried fruit bar, oatmeal, 4 cigarettes, coffee, sugar, and Wrigley's chewing gum. Dinner contained canned lunch meat, canned cheese, biscuits, malted milk tablets, 5 caramels, 4 cigarettes, and more chewing gum. But that's not all. The supper unit contained more canned meat, carrots or apples, more biscuits, a chocolate bar, 4 more cigarettes, and more chewing gum. The American K ration was expected to provide soldiers with 2,800 calories of energy and 98 grams of protein. Meanwhile, the Imperial Japanese ration, at least according to some of my own calculations, it's just 1,720 calories and 43 grams of protein. According to Healthline, a 19 to 30-year-old male is expected to require somewhere between 2,400 and 3,000 calories a day, meaning Japan's soldiers were facing quite a deficit. Calories and protein aside, there are other factors that have played a major role in the mass starvation of Japanese soldiers. According to the Robert C. Williams Museum,
one of the most prevalent nutritional deficiencies that afflicted Japanese troops was beriberi, or kakake, a vitamin B1 deficiency. Polished rice, while a ration staple well liked by soldiers, did not contain the necessary vitamins, exacerbating the nutritional situation. Army quartermasters and physicians attempted to prevent the illness with supplements, but they were not always available or palatable.
So how did Japanese soldiers make up this deficit in nutrition? Japanese soldiers were actually expected to make do for themselves in this regard. Part of Japanese military training included instruction on how to live off the land. Hunting, foraging, and fishing were highly encouraged by Japanese general headquarters in nearly all campaigns. For example, during the Malayan campaign, General Yamashita instructs his officers to, quote, use the land and sea to provide for the soldiers, and emphasize that, quote, the jungle provides for those who know it well. The Imperial Japanese Soldiers Field Manual by Hite Nawa contains instructions for identifying edible plants, fishing techniques, and trapping small animals. It was expected that when food stores ran short, individual soldiers and companies could fend for themselves, at least intermittently. Isao Ayahara, a sergeant stationed in Burma, recalls the army laboring to divert the flow of a nearby river so that would flow closer to their military base. Doing so allowed the troops stationed there to harvest some much-needed animal protein from the environment. Foraging did work decently well for additional calories when in rural environments, but as the Japanese soon found out, it was finite. Most of the remote lands that the Japanese were stationed on simply lacked the resources to feed an army. Seasonal crops and fish migrations also threw wrenches in high command's plan for a self-sufficient military. When foraging failed and the army was near a population center, then they would turn to looting. Farms, stores, warehouses, and individual homes were all ransacked in order to provide for the needs of the army. The same holds true for captured enemy provisions. These resources were not viewed as a nice bonus, they were key parts of the Japanese supply plans. Needless to say, when your supply chain is reliant on the stores of the enemy, it's doomed for turbulence, as there's no real way to accurately estimate how much food could be expected in an enemy storehouse. According to the Military History Network, this oversight was one of the main causes of the Japanese defeat in New Guinea. The Imperial forces were only lightly supplied, as their intention was to quickly overrun Australian forces on the island and take their supplies. After initial success, their assault eventually stalled, and after consuming all their food stores, the Japanese were incapable of moving forward and pushing the Allies off the island. They dug in and waited for supplies from Tokyo. Many of these supplies were lost to the Allied Navy, and of the 120,000 soldiers deployed to New Guinea, 30,000 died of starvation. This brings us to the most discussed, and perhaps the most impactful, cause of Japanese starvation in the Second World War: the devastating effectiveness of the Allied blockade and attacks on Japanese shipping. Japan, a resource-poor island nation, relied heavily on imports, especially from its colonies in Korea, China, and Southeast Asia. Before the war, Japan imported about 24 million tons of goods annually, including vast amounts of rice, soybeans, sugar, and salt, which you will remember are key parts of the Japanese military ration. But as the war dragged on, the US Navy submarines and air forces strangled these vital shipping lines. In 1942, US submarines sank around 700,000 tons of Japanese shipping. In 1943, that number jumped to 1.5 million tons. The next year it exploded. 3.5 million tons of Japanese merchant shipping was sent to the bottom of the Pacific. By 1944, the US Navy had gained enough dominance to lay siege to entire islands without firing a shot. Rather than invade heavily fortified positions, the Allies adopted a strategy called island hopping, bypassing strongholds like Rabaul and letting starvation do the work. One commander, General William H. Rupertus, described it plainly.
"We're not interested in hitting them head on. We'll just leave them to wither on the vine."
This tactic was brutally effective. Rabaul, once a major Japanese base with over 100,000 troops, was completely isolated after late 1943. With supply routes cut, the garrison slowly disintegrated. Estimates vary, but by the end of the war, tens of thousands of Japanese soldiers on Rabaul had died of starvation, disease, or malnutrition-related causes, with some accounts suggesting that up to half of the original force never made it home. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe, and if you know someone who might enjoy this video, feel free to send it their way. Hope you enjoyed, and please click back soon.